What's up everybody, Johan the Gym Monk here, and today we are going to do a tiers list and we're going to do diets. So I'm going to compare the various diets models out there. I can't cover all of them. I'm going to be honest, if you look them up, there's probably at least 100 different diets with their own unique little subcategory. So I'm going to try and bunch them or at least group them up into categories. And kind of give you a bit of an overview of those different diets and some of the reasons why I think some of them are better. And you'll even see that I've marked some diets I've personally followed for long periods of time relatively low on this list because they're not necessarily applicable to everyone. So how I'm going to rank the tier system is S tier would be the best possible diet that any person could follow. The A tier would be something that at least covers the basics. And that by basics, I mean that the macronutrients are there and at least tracked or somewhat regulated, and the micronutrient needs are sufficient. A B tier is a diet that will achieve some positive result, but usually when done for an extended period of time is going to result in some nutrient deficiency or may require you to change something up a little bit later. As for C and D, these are the poorer diets. A C diet would be something that's better than an absolutely awful diet, which would be the D tier. Now let's start at the bottom and work our way up. So the standard American diet I will put into the D tier. The reason for that is that it's excessive in macronutrients, so people are eating far too many calories and the micronutrients are very, very poor. Plus there's extra categories that I am accounting for, things like processed foods. The difference between processed and whole foods, I have a video on this. But anybody who's really paid attention to their own physiology knows that highly processed foods have a detrimental impact to your mental, physical, and emotional performance, and in life in general. So the standard American diet pretty much does everything wrong. I can tell you from personal experience, I've shopped at a Walmart before, even though I don't live in the States at the moment. I have seen people push an entire trolley cart. There was this very large, obese woman pushing a massive American Walmart-sized shopping cart that was loaded over the brim with entirely packaged foods, and there was a box of weight loss shakes sitting on top of this mountain of processed crap. And I can guarantee you that woman never lost any weight. Because weight loss products don't make you lose weight. Eating correctly and being in a healthy balance energetically will keep you at a healthy body weight. So we're gonna move up pretty much immediately from the standard American diet. In the D class here, we can also maybe put like, people in extreme poverty situations, those sorts of poverty diets or lack of access in certain places where there's famines, things like that. These sort of like really, really unhealthy states that humans can be in. And generally, you don't wanna be following any model like that. Now, in the C tier, we're going to put some of the fad diets, things like the South Beach diet or sides only. The vegan diet, unfortunately, is going to go in this tier. And I do want to make a clarification here between the vegan diet and somebody who is eating vegan but is paying an incredible amount of attention to their food. So the majority of people that follow a vegan lifestyle are just basically still eating pretty much garbage, and they're not accounting for micro and macronutrient needs. Maybe they're accounting for macro, but very seldom are they like paying attention to the B vitamins, choline, which is a big one, K2, vitamin A, and vitamin D. So because of that, I am going to put the vegan diet really at the bottom of the rung, because if you don't pay extreme amounts of attention to every single one of the things I mentioned and protein, you will have terrible health outcomes. And I can tell you from personal experience, many people I've worked with, I have to frequently get them off vegan diets to get them healthy again. And if you're currently on a vegan diet and you're feeling great, congratulations, you're still in your honeymoon and you have time. If you continue with a vegan diet and it is not in harmony with your body. Now, there are some people where their bodies like eating a vegan diet and they are healthy. But the vast majority of people that I've seen experience serious health consequences. And honestly, if you want to find out more about that sort of thing, just do your research, go look at the ex-vegan community, and there's some really shocking stuff there that you should see. The other diets that we're going to put in the C tier list are crash diets, like I think the South Beach diet, or the sides only diet, or any kind of diet like a soup detox diet, all these green smoothie fad 3 week like programs. This is all, in my opinion, fad and is really not going to get you, for the most part, any significantly healthier on a consistent long-term basis, which is really what diet is, because diet is something you do every day. It's what you eat. B tier. Here is if it fits your macros. Why? Because they actually account for macronutrients, which make sure that people don't overeat. And I will give them credit, most of them encourage people to eat whole foods. So if you're eating whole foods, you're not overeating, you're already well upon your way to a successful and healthy lifestyle. The other diet that I would put in the B tier list is the carnivore diet, a diet I followed myself for about 13 months because of an autoimmune condition I had. I'll make another video about that. But the carnivore diet, for example, let's get into that quickly, gives you a lot of nutrients, but not all the micronutrients that people seem to thrive on. Now, I want to be careful here. You can survive on a carnivore diet almost indefinitely. Most people seem to be able to survive on it. But the question is whether they're thriving or not. Just because it's better than the standard American diet or better than what they were eating before, is it really optimal, or are they just doing better than what they were doing? So the carnivore diet is a very useful elimination diet. I've put it this far up in the tier list because of how effective it is at relieving many medical conditions that make you significantly less healthy. But it's still not an A or an S tier class because, again, it's a very limited nutrient profile that you can receive, and you're not able to eat plants, and a lot of people tend to thrive when they eat certain micronutrients from plants that are very difficult to get from meat. In the B tier list would be sort of any kind of attempt to kind of balance your diet well. Sort of if it fits your macros profile. We're tracking food, you're paying attention to what you're eating, and you're preferably not eating a lot of processed foods. An example of a if it fits your macros, but maybe a little bit stricter, is the CBR diet, the chicken, broccoli, and rice diet. Now, this is one that you'll see popularized by men's magazines and sometimes women's magazines. Celebrities will follow a chicken, broccoli, and rice diet to kind of get lean quickly or to lose some weight for the summer, something like that. But it's not accounting for micronutrients, okay? You're just counting macronutrients. Chicken is poor in micronutrients compared to beef, lamb, and other ruminant animals. And broccoli is also only one vegetable with one nutrient profile that a lot of people can't handle very well either. Many diets like the chicken, broccoli, and rice, if it fits your macros, or even the carnivore diet, and I'll even throw keto and intermittent fasting into this category as well. They're good because they give us effective, sustainable ways to achieve results, but they're not going to get us the optimal results. More details have to be included. In the A tier, we have high-performance diets that account for both macro and micronutrient needs. So something like the vertical diet, Stan Efferding compiled a bunch of previously existing strategies that coaches and people like that were using with clients, as well as a lot of scientific research, and created a diet that both accounts for macro and micronutrient needs, kind of giving you the full complement of what a human should take in terms of nutrients and all of that. So something like the vertical diet or any other diet that takes into account their micronutrient needs as well. So you're making sure that you're getting enough zinc, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Those sorts of considerations are also taken into account in the diet. But you'll notice I didn't put this as the S tier. The S tier we are reserving for indigenous diets. So that means the ancestral diets that people have been eating for thousands of years based on their geographical locations. So for example, the S tier class diets that an Eskimo individual could eat would be the Eskimo ancient diet. The S tier class that a European would eat would be whatever their ancestors ate going back 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years before the as many of the modern foods came in, especially going back at least 1,000 or 2 years or more. Now, why would I rank this as S tier? Well, the reason is because when we're talking about the best diet, it would be the one that you've been the most adapted to. Your genetics have had the longest time to pick out specific foods in the environment that complement the nutrient profiles of your genetic pool. And humans, like animals, instinctually are able to find foods that are nutrient rich in the specific necessities that they have. And the reason why S-tier class diets can vary so much from each other, but all be included within a single diet framework. I'll give you a simple example. The difference between an Eskimo's diet and somebody from Papua New Guinea would be massive in terms of macronutrients. One would be high in carbs, one would be extremely low in carbs. One would be very high in saturated fat, and the other one's going to be very low in saturated fat. Yet both of these are indigenous diets, and I would consider them both S-tier classes for the genetics of the people that are eating them. Now, when we're talking about specific individual needs, humans are extraordinarily diverse. There is a vast amount of research on this, but humans metabolize chemicals at extremely different rates. So you know this from alcohol. You can see some people naturally can drink more than others can, which means that they have a higher ability to detoxify ethanol from their systems and have a greater ability to handle the toxicity that ethanol creates. There are some individuals that can't eat spicy food. There's some individuals that are allergic to gluten, for example, or have lactose intolerances. Now those are just a few of the basic things that most people hear about, but when it comes down to, let's say, a bell pepper, there's hundreds of compounds in a single bell pepper, and you may not be able to break down all of those compounds efficiently because you have different polymorphisms. Now there's hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of polymorphisms that human beings can have. And that's essentially changes in the genetic variety, like the difference between blue, brown, and black eyes, for example. There's these little changes that we all have, but these little changes make a big difference in our nutrient needs. Now, I've obviously just made eating at an S-tier class extraordinarily complicated because you might think, well, do I need to go get a genetic test and then see every single one of these things and try and track what I need based on all of that and come up to hundreds and hundreds of spreadsheets? No. To eat in an S-tier class, you have to eat what your body requires, which means you have to pay attention to what your body requires. And that means actually being in touch with your basic physiology. A diet model that you can look at that's a little bit more modern than the indigenous class, that would still fit in within the S tier, would be something like a needs-oriented rotational diet. So in the book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy by Paul Chek, you can find an example of a rotational diet. There's many examples of diets that do this. That's just the one I know the best. But any kind of diet that's providing a more diverse array of nutrients, and as well as getting you in touch with what your specific needs are. Now, there's different tests you can take. There's the metabolic typing diet, there's the primal pattern typing diet. All of these diets make attempts to help you narrow down which nutrients and which foods suit you better and fulfill your needs better and which don't, and thereby beginning to intuitively, in contact with the body's own physiology, beginning to make food decisions that bring you towards a healthier state. So now that the tier list is done, I'm just going to quickly go over kind of how you can build an S-tier diet for yourself and some kind of tips and tricks and easy ways to kind of improve your eating pattern. First of all, unprocessed always beats processed foods by a massive degree. You should eat at least 80% of your food unprocessed. And what I mean by unprocessed is you don't buy it in a can or you don't buy it in some kind of processed or pre-prepared form. So you're cooking and eating foods that are fresh before cooking and you're eating them quickly afterwards and not being kept for ages and allowing for enzymatic degradation. Fresh is better than processed. I think it's very important at this stage as I'm discussing diets to cover why I have a very big problem with a lot of the diets that are being promoted by the fitness industry and why none of them are in the S tier category. And the reason is because most of these diets will utilize diet hacks, like for example, using artificial sweeteners, flavorants, colorants, things like that to make the food more palatable and keep you on your diet, keep you in your macros, for example. But what many of these individuals don't account for is the effects of these chemicals on your cognition and on your actual performance and function in life. how are you going to get yourself to an S tier class diet and quickly? There's a number of ways. You can look at your genetic ancestry and do a little bit of research in sort of what types of environments they were in. So if they were in an environment that the ground freezes over in the winter, you might be more adapted to a little bit more fat, a little bit more protein, more saturated animal fats, because vegetables don't grow when the ground freezes. So your genetics would have adapted to a little bit more of that, and that might be a clue that you should be eating some of those foods. Now, if you're paying attention to how you feel, your body will actually tell you after each meal whether you ate what you should have or not. And that is by the biofeedback that it gives you. So if you finish a meal and you still feel hungry, then you've not done what you should have, because the body should be satisfied after a meal. If you eat a meal and you're extremely lethargic, you've done something wrong. You've eaten something that is offended, or in a ratio that has offended your body, and therefore it's sucking out energy from the system in order to fix and balance the food that's coming in. So there's another sign that you've eaten something that your body isn't quite happy with. Now, this obviously doesn't apply to after eating, let's say, a dinner that helps you fall asleep a little bit later. I'm not talking about that. I mean, after eating like a lunch or a breakfast, if you experience this wave of lethargy afterwards, then you've done something that has offended your physiology and you need to pay a little bit more attention. Now, a simple rule of thumb is carbohydrates are going to make you go up. So they're going to create a lot of energy and hyperactivity. And they might make you feel a little jittery and then give you a crash after that. And a lot of times over-consuming fat and protein will make you feel sluggish, but almost in this kind of like, it feels like you're kind of clogged. And it might make you feel a little bit jammed up, like I feel clogged, I feel like I can't think properly, my thoughts are flowing slowly. So just by paying attention to some of these simple biofeedback mechanisms that our body has, our body is constantly sensing the levels of nutrients, sensing the levels of blood sugar, sensing the pH of the blood. All of this information is constantly being fed back and forth between the nervous system and the rest of the body. So if you're paying attention truly to how your body is responding to foods that you eat, you'll end up eating at an S tier class regardless of what specific diet you're following, provided that we're not eating processed foods that our ancestors didn't have access to. So this means that fermented foods are processed, but because they're processed biologically, they're kind of kept active by those microbes, they actually contain a ton of beneficial foods. Now, what I mean by processed foods is I mean processed with modern processing methods, like, high heat, ultra heat pasteurization, canning, those sorts of things. I'm not talking about fermented foods like yogurt, sauerkraut, and kimchi, and those sorts of things. Those sorts of processings can actually be beneficial. So there is some category of processing of foods that can actually be helpful, like for example, cooking meat. Cooking a potato is a form of processing, but it makes it more available. So when I say processed food, I do want you to keep in mind, I don't mean you have to eat all of your food completely raw and straight from the vine. A lot of foods can be cooked or even fermented to make them more digestible. But when I say processed, I really mean in the modern day, using chemicals, using excessive amounts of heat on sensitive things like dairy, those sorts of processing. So in general, when we're talking about improving our diet and taking it up the tier list to a better and better diet, what we're really moving towards is eating exactly what you need when you need it. If you pay enough attention and you practice habits long enough, you will be able to tell almost hour to hour which nutrients or which specific foods your body needs. You will have a craving for almonds or apples or bananas or grapes or steak or a piece of fish. Every time you need that food, your body will indicate that you require it. But you're only going to get there if you cut out the chemicals that disrupt cognition. Artificial sweeteners is one of them. And it's only going to happen if you actually become conscious and present with your food. So what's some ways that we can kind of cultivate an S-tier class in our own lives and improve our diets without making it extremely complicated? Tip number 1 is pray or meditate with your meal before eating. Now, this is something that a lot of families do already, but perhaps take it a step further than making it a habit. make it an active practice where when you're praying for your food, actually pay attention to how is your body feel by being in the presence of that food. Remember, our bodies are electromagnetic circuits that can sense other electromagnetic circuits. For example, if you pay enough attention and you put your hand next to a plant versus not, so let's say you're blindfolded and one hand is near a plant and the other is not, you should be able to tell which one is nearer to the plant simply because the plant has an electromagnetic field, as does your hand, and the interaction thereby is actually perceptible to the nervous system. So sit with your food before you eat it and allow yourself to feel the food. Look at it. Become present in the moment with that food instead of just shoveling it down. And you will notice the flavors of that food. You'll notice the textures of that food. But more than that, you're giving your body a chance to speak. Because if there's a lot of distractions, and this takes us to step 2, distraction-free eating. If you're having problems modifying or optimizing your diet, take away all of the distractions while you're eating and be present with the food that you're eating. Actually take the time to feel how that food is going into your body, how your taste buds are sending signals throughout your system, how it's making you feel, how it's making you, whether your mouth is staying wet and receptive of the food and digestive of the food, or whether after a certain point your mouth is actually drying out because you're done eating, but you're still watching TV, so you're just shoveling more food back in there, even though your body's already told you to stop. So distraction-free eating is a great way that we can immediately help improve our consciousness of what we're eating and actually eat the right foods for ourselves. The third and final tip is a food journal. So what you can do is on one page, you could have symptoms that you're having. So that would be anything from like, I felt particularly energetic and focused today, to I had a headache, to I felt drowsy between 3 and 4 p.m. I had acne breakouts, I had a skin issue, I didn't sleep well, etc. You write down any kind of noticeable physiological changes on one side, and the other side you list your foods and when you ate them. Now, this could get a little bit complicated for some people, so one way that you could do is there's a lot of apps that you can download, but you can simply just take pictures of all the food that you eat and make a small note with each one of those images about, or in conjunction with those images, about any symptoms that you may or may not be having. And even just tracking your sort of general attitude, like, oh, today I felt very bubbly and energetic, I felt very positive. That could be an indication that your body's actually in the right homeostatic balance. Whereas like, oh, well, today I was depressed, but obviously that has nothing to do with my diet. Many of us who've actually done this exercise and actually tracked what we ate or done significant dietary changes have noticed that even mood can often be very, very tightly tied to the kinds of food that we're eating, and often indicates an incorrect or unbalanced diet model that our body is having to compensate for, leading to physiological symptoms like poor mood, depression, lethargy, other things like that. Now that we've gone through the food tier list and some tips and tricks, I hope this helps. If you need any more help with your diet, you can always contact me. I do have space for a few more clients, but otherwise like and subscribe, share this video if it helped you, and I'll see you soon.